All set? All right. It is 7 o'clock on December 12th, 2017. This is a meeting of the Norfolk Board of Health, which is now called to order. The first item on our agenda for the evening is a public hearing. It relates to proposed upgrade of a septic system on Spring Street at 11 Spring Street. There is an official preamble that I have to read, which is that a variance hearing from Board of Health Regulations is called to order for 11 Spring Street. It's my duty to inform the applicant or representative that you've got to provide the board with data to support your request for a waiver of our requirements, and that if you don't receive the waiver, it'll do you manifest injustice. You've also got to show that what you intend to do is environmentally acceptable. So, who is presenting? You, sir.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Michael Trowbridge, Hutchins Trowbridge Associates, 200 Chauncey Street, Mansfield, Mass. I represent the owners. What we have this evening is two requests that we're asking for. One would be to be 7 feet from the lot line, and where 10 feet is required. And we have 15 feet from the existing dwelling, where 20 feet is required. On that 15 feet, we have a poly barrier that's actually between the system and the house. This originally started, the system is in the backyard currently. We did perks out back, those soils were not suitable. We moved out front, we dug holes, and we performed 2 successful perk tests. Unfortunately, the front yard is extremely small, and to get a size system that we have to be in full compliance, we had one of 2 options. We could actually dig up more of the driveway, which is a cost for the applicant. Already they have internal plumbing changes they have to make. They're ripping up their entire front yard as well as relocating their water service. So it may not seem like much, but to move it that other 3 feet just takes that much more out of the driveway. So we're trying to minimize the damage that we're actually doing in the front, and as well as there's a light pole that's out in the front yard as well. And without, as I said, without granting this variance, this would actually cause more damage to the existing front yard. As far as environmentally, this is actually, we are in full compliance with everything, with the exception of those 2 items. As far as the environment, where the amount of feet above groundwater that is recommended, in relationship to the next door lot, their house is approximately 50 feet away from our trenches. Their system is actually in the rear yard. So there's no issues with breakout or anything that in the front yard. Thank you.
Okay. Your plan has a question mark after the existing system. It says cesspool question mark, tank question mark. So you're not really sure what's out in the backyard?
That's correct. It's buried. It looked like it was a cesspool with maybe somebody at one point might have done an overflow trench. There's no as-built on file, so the only way you could actually find out exactly what's out there is to rip up the whole backyard.
Yeah. Well, clearly what you're proposing to do, despite these small changes, are significantly more environmentally friendly, shall we say, than what's out in the backyard right now.
Absolutely. This would be much further above groundwater. Probably the septic in the backyard is probably
In groundwater.
has been in groundwater for the last 50 years that it's actually been there. As I said, environmentally, with the lot next door, usually the separations are to keep septic systems away from each other and not putting them right on the lot line. And under Title V, with the repair, you can actually go right up to the lot line. We're just asking for 3 feet.
Understood. Wade, you had some comments for us?
Yes, I submitted written comments for you if you have any questions on that. And just on Spring Street alone, it's a tough area on that side of the Spring Street. It's very tough soils. I thought I was very fortunate getting percolation rates in the front that were workable, and moving the system over towards the left a little bit makes sense regarding the existing driveway, not destroying it, and bringing the system to the foundation places the variance. The owner is bearing the negativity on the variance. It's going towards their foundation, not towards the road. I mean, I know there's a water service on the road, I'm not sure if it's on that side of the road or the other side, but maintaining the septic system 10 feet from the front property line would make sure that it's staying away from the town public water service.
So is your recommendation to the board that we accept the grant the variances?
Yes, yes.
Can I
Quest-
just ask
Yes,
one
questions, sure.
So, in your recommendation, you mentioned that you wouldn't allow was it a garbage disposal?
Yeah, that's the designer's choice. We're getting feedback. I'm hearing
I
feedback.
am too. Which one should we go? Okay? All right.
Yeah, the designer has a choice. On a repair permit, local regulations allows the designer not to include a garbage grinder in the design. On new construction, the town requires all designs to have a garbage grinder part of its design. So if on a repair, initially what it will do is end up making the system smaller, leaching area smaller. So what the designer wants to do is try to keep it compact in front of the house and not extend it going into the driveway. And if they do design if they choose not to design with a garbage grinder, then the local regulation requires a deed restriction on the property of not allowing a garbage grinder to be installed in the house.
Okay. So there will be no garbage disposal system in there? Or,
Not that we know of, yes. There'll be a deed restriction attached to the house.
okay,
So anybody buying the house or existing in the house will know that the system cannot handle a garbage grinder.
okay.
Question, Jeff?
Not really a question. I mean, is this a gravity system? I don't have the rest of the plan. I assume it is. I don't see any pump chambers, so.
It actually is a gravity system. I've got the full plan if you want to take a look at it.
No, that's all right. It's neither here nor there. I was just curious about that. I assume, like you said, Wade had looked it over for breakout for the adjacent property owners, so that works. Only other question I would have would be water service for the abutter. You're 7 feet from the property line, so has that just make sure that that water service isn't within 3 feet of that?
Yes, it's actually quite a bit. I had the neighbors.
I've got that as well.
plans. Do you? Okay, because Ms. Warren did call up concerned.
Yeah, as long as it's been.
Yeah, water service is way over here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in total agreement as far as getting the cesspool, failed cesspool out of the groundwater. I think it's a no-brainer as far as putting in a Title V system, so I'm good.
Are there any folks here interested in this proposal, want to say something? Yes,
Perfect. Hi, I'm Alex Burnham, 15 Spring Street. It sounds good. I had two quick questions. Our septic service is in our front yard, so I didn't know if that had any, it shouldn't have any bearing, I don't think, but in terms of the location of this.
so you're next door,
Yeah,
this
to the west
property
of the property, yes.
heading toward Alice Ave.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, I think number 9 has the backyard service that was put in.
Okay.
So it looks like you're over the 50 feet, right?
Oh, yeah. So where's your property again, sir?
15 Spring, so it's direct west of.
That side?
11, yeah.
Okay.
They're quite a ways away.
Yeah, you're adjacent property, you're on the the system's on the opposite side of where your property is.
So the state code requires a 50-foot separation between the fields, so it sounds like a.
No, a 10-foot separation.
Oh, sorry, 10, okay, so only 10, so yeah, you're well off.
So the fields wouldn't be overlapping at all?
Not at
Okay.
all. Actually, come up, take a look at the plans.
Okay, yeah, that'd be helpful. Actually, I hadn't.
And there's a large one, just in case you need glasses or something.
And I'm sorry, one last question. What size is the tank going in?
It's going to be a
1,500-gallon tank.
1,500. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I keep this copy? Sure. Okay, thank you.
Other comments from butters?
Hi.
I think it's, yes, go ahead.
I just had a question regarding.
Identify yourself, please.
My name is Jim Felton, and I'm an associate of the prospective buyer of the property, should this be installed successfully. I just had a question regarding the cesspool in the back. Are there any town ordinances or bylaws that require anything to be done to that? Does that have to be filled in or moved, or removed, or anything else done to it?
You want to answer that?
Actually, there's a note on the plan. What they do is they'll actually pump that out and backfill it.
And the pipe would be disconnected from leading the house going out to the back.
Correct.
So the answer is it'll be taken care of.
Okay,
It won't be an open hole back there for someone to fall in, if that's.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, is there a motion on this matter?
Motion to grant the variance for setback distances as presented in the actual written, as written in the December 12th memo from PSC.
I second the motion.
There's a motion, a second for the discussion. No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much. Happy
done.
holidays.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Here, I'll take that.
Let's see, we have a 7:15 appointment. Is Tim Martin here? We're close enough to 7:15, why don't you come on up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Timothy Martin, on behalf of the ownership of Lot 77, assesses Lot 77, 78, and 79 on Pennacook Street. The reason for my hearing tonight is a couple of things. It's kind of unusual, but I'm here to request some information that I think Wade has available that would be very helpful to this project. And I'll give you a little bit of background to tell you why I think it's important to the board and to the ownership to get this information. Lots 77, 78, and 79 are all in different ownership today, and they have been since the developer sold them decades ago. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been involved on that site with Wade, and we've done extensive perk tests. Let me share with you a plan. This is a plan that John Glauser drew, and you saw this plan back in July. We came in July informally just to talk about the site and the design of the system. It was an informal hearing, and the goal of that hearing was to get some feedback from the Board of Health agent as to the design and to what we could do to improve on the design, because there's been a lot of concern out there on that site. During that hearing, a lot of the discussion went to perk tests that were done on Lot 77, which is over here, 78, and areas outside the leaching area. As a result of that hearing, there was a lot of confusion. And I'm going to read to you a letter that I wrote to submit my request for hearing tonight, if I could. It's very brief. So subsequent to that hearing back in July, I wrote a letter to you folks dated October 11th, 2017. Dear Mr. Chairman and board members, on July 18th, 2017, John Glauser informally presented to you a proposed septic design plan. That's the plan in front of you, on my behalf. The board was accommodating as the hearing went on for more than the allotted time. You may recall that the Board of Health agent indicated he has been involved with the site over many years with several different engineering firms. The agent commented on historical testing that I was not aware of and which is not on file with the town. However, the agent presented no data to support those comments. In fairness to Wade, we were in here informally, so I didn't think he'd have that information at his beck and call. But near the end of the hearing, the chairman quite simply asked if there were historical logs available for the site. The Board of Health agent did not respond. I am asking the same question, and have requested copies of the agent's logs for that site. While the agent acknowledges possession of the logs, he has respectfully refused to provide them to John Glauser, myself, nor offered them to the board. I believe it would serve both the board and myself if complete copies of the logs were released. While I encourage full cooperation and disclosure of all information regarding testing of these lots, the Commonwealth requires it. In Massachusetts, it is well settled that a developer must be advised of all the facts and other material in the possession of the board on which the board intends to rely. That's Fairbairn, Planning Board of Barnstable, 360 Northeast 2nd, and I had a typo, it should have been 668, 5 Mass Appellate Court, 171, 181. My opinion is the agent is an extension of the board and must provide all information and material on which the board will and has already relied on. The reason I'm asking for this is long before I got involved, there were at least, I learned, I didn't know there were this many. I knew there was another one, Paul Cutler was involved, and then another engineer that I wasn't aware of that Wade referred to. So Wade's had a longer history on this site than I have. And I think his logs, and it got very confusing out there, but I think his logs would help clarify what the issue is, or whether or not the soils are consistent or not consistent. Our position is generally that, at least on 79, all the historical data that I can find that we have, that we've submitted to you, and that's in the file with the Board of Health Office, is consistent on what the soils show. Wade can agree or disagree, but I'd like to see what his logs show also. I think it would be helpful to me, to John Glauser, to the board in designing this. A big change in all of this over the years has been this. While the lots are in separate ownership and they remain that way today, what's changed dramatically is the Board of Health, the Title V regulations. They've been relaxed somewhat from when these lots were first developed, or first drawn and approved. Back at that time, you had to have less than 30 minutes per inch for approvable perk rate. Subsequent to that, Governor Jane Swift changed that law. It was approved, and as Wade knows now, perk rates up to 60 minutes per inch are acceptable. That's been a big change on this site. The other thing that's changed is the wetlands. The wetlands have become more restrictive since this has been drawn, since this subdivision came into effect back in the 70s or 60s, I think. So you had two things going on. You had a little bit of relaxation on the perk test, and you had more stringent on the wetlands. What that did to each of these lots, while it was encouraging for the perk test, it also constrained it by the wetlands. So what this new ownership group has done, working together, all three lots, it's like herding cats, we're finally there. What we're proposing to do is take lot 79 and a portion of 78 and have this system approved for a 4-bedroom septic system. You need both lots. Before, all the ownerships worked in silos. They weren't working together, from what I can gather. Now, I don't know if that's factual, but that's what I could see. So you need all of that to potentially get one house out there. That's been the big change. That's why the information on all of the history would be helpful. It would be helpful to John Glauser. It would be helpful to me. I think it would be helpful to you when you finally get this presentation. It would help us tweak our plan. It would help us show what the soils really are. And I just want to make one more point on the case law that I cited. Real briefly, the case law that I found indicates that the developer must be advised of all the facts and other material in the possession of the board, referring to the Board of Health, on which it intends to rely, and he must be given the opportunity to produce all relevant evidence to cross-examine witnesses and to present argument. Generally, the judge in this case said that your board is a little bit different than the other boards in town. You're more of a judicial board because of the review and the power that you have. Therefore, the judge in this case, which is still good law, indicates that the developer should get all the evidence that's available to you, and in my opinion, the agent, so we can look at this and make it and present properly. So therefore, my request is simple. I'm just hoping to get, I don't know what they're going to show. I'm just hoping to get copies of any logs that Wade may have on this site. That's really all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for a decision on the plan. We intend to take those logs, look at them, look at the site. Wade knows the history out there with the groundwater. That's challenging, but we wanted to show what the soils are. And that's why I'm asking for the copies of his logs.
Are you asking for logs that, in Wade's possession, that were performed prior to his employment with our board?
If he's going to comment on it, and he already has, the answer is yes. Because at the hearing back in July, the answer is yes.
Well, maybe we need to sort of put comments aside and talk about the data upon which our board is going to make a decision on permitting a system for this lot. I mean, that's a board decision. We have advice from our consultant, certainly, but it's up to us to make the decision. And that decision that we make has to be based upon the information in front of us, all the information that's in front of us, okay? So right now, the information that we're talking about is that which has been provided by observations conducted in the field and supplied to us formally in proposals that came from, you know, the most recent work and work that preceded it. But that's all we have to go on. You know, conversations may have taken place in the field that we weren't privy to. Maybe some folks out in the field were, but we don't have any documentation of what those conversations were. We cannot be influenced by whatever those people in the field were talking to each other about. We got to go by the data in front of us. So this body of information that we're talking about today is all that has been submitted to the board. Okay? That's how we make our decision.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Mr. Chairman, in July, you yourself asked, aren't there any logs for this site? Because the conversation went from this proposed system to testing over here. And I sat here quietly because it was so far convoluted about the 15 or 16 tests that had been done, nothing to do with that project. So you've already heard all that. And that's why we've...
Is your question really right now the fact that you're basically combining this lot with parts of another one, and what you're missing is whatever data was collected on soils and water table in the other one? Is that what's missing here?
My concern is that the Board of Health agent may make a recommendation to you based on information that has nothing, because he already talked about it, based on information that has nothing to do with that proposal. And you've already heard that. And I'm just saying, that's wonderful. I just want to see the information. I don't mind that he said it. I just want to get the same information that he based his comments on, because you've already heard it.
Well, I
Therefore, should be...
recall, our discussion was that this was a large field because of the soils that were out there due to the perk rates or whatever it was. And the concern was there was not enough test pits to cover the footprint of the system to have an accurate determination that those were going to be consistent soils from end to end of the system. And Wade did make an aside that he knew from past experience that the soils on the site were difficult. And I don't think he ever came out and said that he has logs, or he was willing to give logs, or that this board would even be comfortable taking in logs from a different company in a different town to use in making our decision. I think that would open up a whole issue with liability, that even if Wade was willing to give them up, we would have to talk to council about even using those things. But if Wade is not willing to give them up for some reason or the other, my opinion is that, first off, we can't force him to give data that was prior to his employment with us. And if you want data that he has, I think you'd have to almost subpoena him for it. I don't know if there's any way to get data from him if for some reason he's not willing to give it up, if it exists. But I would not feel comfortable as a board taking in data that was done well prior to Wade working under our umbrella of legal protection, so to speak.
Well, I'm new to the board, and just this meeting, I was just focused on the tests that you had done back in, was it April?
I'm not sure.
What was relevant to what you were talking about. And those tests show that this system wasn't going to work. So I don't understand.
Well, that's my point. It got so confusing. In
didn't
fact,
get
this system is
confusing.
certified by an engineer. It meets every Title V regulation. It meets this Board of Health regulations without a variance.
But the only problem is there was not, and this is again in Title V, as part of protection of the public health, there was not enough test pits for the size of this footprint to accurately determine that the soils were consistent across the whole system. That's my understanding. Well, I'll defer to Wade on that one, but that's what I believe the crux of the issue was at the time. There needed to be more test pits to prove that within this footprint, those soils were consistent across of it. And the fact that there were many failed pits across here was more ammunition, so to speak, as for providing more test pits to assume that it was a homogeneous soil cross-section across here. I mean, is that correct?
That's,
It's been a while, but, so I'm not even sure where the other test pits are coming in. I understand you may want an understanding of what's going on over here, and I think that's almost, again, I'm not speaking for the whole board, but I would think that would be personally between you and Wade if he's willing or has those to give them to you. But otherwise, with the lack of that, it would be more test pits being done out there.
See, in my opinion, you just made my case because you talked about failed perk tests out there. I know of one, possibly two failed perk tests.
I'm going
that I
off of
was-
memory from July.
No,
so don't-
and you're correct, and that's what happened that night, and that's my point. Many of the perk tests that we tried to do, and John Glauser got into this, were abandoned. Now, Wade and I can agree or disagree on definitions.
But no, see, now you're convoluting it, because that gets into a whole other issue
That's my point.
of saturated perks and things like that you brought up. That's a variance. We're not getting into that. The only thing you asked us about was test pit availability, data availability. So I don't want to get into this little rabbit hole about variances and perk tests and saturated soils. You're here asking about availability for perk test data that Wade may have. Is that correct? That's what your letter states?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's focus on that, all right? What are you actually asking us, to make Wade give up data? Is that what you're asking us
Yes,
to do?
that's exactly right.
Again, I'm not
Well, the
comfortable
court
doing
says
that.
that.
No, the court says that we have to make our decision based upon all the information that we have, which we have to share with you. And believe me, we're ready to do that. That's not the issue
Yeah,
here.
if it's available, absolutely, we have to give it
Yeah,
up.
If it's in the
Right.
filing, if it's going to be the basis for our decision, we're both going to see it. There's not going to be any
Yeah.
other data
Of
that's
course
somehow
not, right. If
influencing
it's
our
public
decision.
data, we have it, it has to be given to you.
So
There's no
really,
reason to hold it.
as Jeff was saying, the issue really is, within this system space here, we need to have test holes to document what is the nature of the soils under that footprint. That's what we need.
To all of your points, I agree. In your file, you will find other test pit information that Wade would be opposed that I present. And I understand why. They were abandoned test pits back years ago. But they did show or suggest that the test pits in this area were consistent with what John Glaser got in the mid-30s. The reason that they were abandoned late into the testing, you can see the timing, it's all in there, was because once they got over 30 minutes per inch, they were abandoned. Today, those test perks are good. My point is, those test perks may be right in the middle of this area, and if they had just followed through, that they certify what the, well, they don't certify, they imply what the results would have been because they came to a conclusion. Now, it would be so simple to go back out and do perk tests, but as John Glaser explained, it's not that I'm opposed to doing more perk tests. Because of the groundwater calibration out there, it's very tricky to get into the, and forgive me, I'm not the engineer, to get into the C2 level at the right spot, too high, too low. But the soils are perk, they perk prior to my involvement, and I don't know where they were done. He may have the logs on that. He may show the information for that. It may show. Chances are it would, because the system's so big that some of them were done in here and outside the wetlands area. Chances are it would show that. And I agree with all of your points. I don't disagree with any of them. But that's information is important. If I could easily go out there and do more perk tests, not a problem.
Where is that information? But not in our files.
It is in your files.
It's in our
That's
Town
correct.
of Norfolk files?
Correct.
Well, you have a copy.
I don't have,
If I may, it was observed by Carl Domi.
right.
On the,
Oh, these are the failed ones.
When you say failed, they're not failed.
They were abandoned.
Abandoned, correct.
Okay.
Just like the one, so
So they
there
were
are-
never followed through. They were never to the point where they can be used then, because they were abandoned.
Exactly, but
They never were submitted to the board then, right?
they were submitted to the secretary, they're in the file.
What is in the file? A plan like this that shows?
No, the reason.
Test pits?
Whatever the form is.
Soil logs?
Soil logs.
Soil
Okay,
logs.
soil logs.
Right.
So we have locations?
They are sketched on there,
Is there
correct.
a plan that shows where those were
There's
done?
a sketch, yes. And I don't know if I brought it, but I do have it. I may have it in
Get
my
the-
file, but
can we get the
it's in,
file?
that's where I got them from.
Yeah,
Do we
For
have
my
those?
involvement.
okay.
So that was what was encouraging to us when we saw all this, to say, okay, and in fact, Mr. Domi wrote a letter and saying, well, because I'm told that he was involved with the draftsmanship of the new Title V reg. He wrote the letter that while these don't pass today, didn't say fail, he said while they don't pass today, doesn't mean they won't be buildable in the future. And I believe he wrote it because he knew, because he was involved with the new statute and the drafting of that under the new statute they would pass. So that's why this information is important. And the problem, like I said, is going out there, you got to watch the water year to year. There aren't many, the soils haven't changed over years, and at least in my lifetime. I think Wade might agree with that. I'm not 1,000 years old. But the groundwater going up and down, permeability, it's very difficult to get the right spot because of the groundwater. I think if I would dig the whole site. If Wade would allow it, I would dig the whole site. We could do samples of every 20 feet, 15 feet, send it off to a lab, we'd have continuity of the soil so they wouldn't be contaminated.
But you can't do that
Get
with
a,
new
sci-
construction.
get a
though.
scientist to do that.
But you can't do that with new construction.
So you're talking about porosity testing rather than percolation?
You would know better than I.
Right.
But,
All right, well,
but-
Wade's been quiet up until now.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate your points. Wade, do you have a response? I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely, and I understand what Mr. Martin's coming from, and just as I continue, Mr. Martin, I don't have any background information that's like the hidden, like, I don't have anything like that. Any type of work I've done in this town is I've done with engineers in this town. But this is all coming down to one word, because I thought about this, and Mr. Martin did contact me through an email, and he asked me for some information, and I emailed back to him saying that, actually, I'll give you the results, what I emailed back to him. A little packet for you guys, because it's a long drawn-out story, and I think it's something that should be issued, should be talked about, since with Fran being very new. This is really, really interesting. It's called boundaries. What am I doing out there? What am I doing out there? I'm walking out there, I even go out with my dog, I'm friendly, we talk to each other, everybody's talking, talk about sports and stuff. So what am I really doing out there? I'm the approving authority. I represent the Board of Health. And what I do out there is serious stuff. And there's a soil evaluators out there also. And he and I are, or he or she and I are two separate entities. And that's where boundaries start. And I think that's where a conclusion is that people don't understand where the boundaries are. So if you look into, and so I researched the state code of what's going on out there, what my responsibilities are. And just to refer back to this, the soil logs that goes into the files, that's part of my responsibilities. Part of my responsibilities is for citing of systems, is that I overview the percolation test, I overview the deep observation holes, and I observe this. I watch the soil evaluator perform perk tests. Inside the state codes, there's also means of where we discuss things together. There's also parts of the site citing of systems where I have authority, I have jurisdiction on the site, meaning that I contain all the laws and I contain all the control of the site for the system only, which is an on-site septic system. And the soil evaluator and I work together, and I'm an observer. I watch the perk tests. He or she, the soil evaluator, I could discuss where the least or the most restricted soil layer is. We discuss that. The perk hole is done. We look at it. We agree to it. He pours it, and I time it. And he also times it too. Well, he times it, and I observe it. What the approving authority has more authority on the site is that if he feels that the soils are inconsistent in the site of the leaching facility, he can request for more. And he has that ability. And then the soil evaluator would have to prepare more test holes and perk tests until until the approving authority is satisfied. That's part of my job. At the end of the day, the soil evaluator fills out Forms 11 and Forms 12. Form 11 is dealing with a soil profile. He writes it down in descriptive form, and Form 12 is a percolation test where he has the timing, has the percolation rates on it. And he signs his name on it, and part of the signing of the name is saying that he or she is a soil evaluator of the state of Massachusetts. I, as the approving authority, and he has 60 days to present this material from the day of the perk. 60 days to present to the town. He's also required to submit to both forms to the designer, sometimes they're the same, and also the landowner and to the approving authority. If he fails to send it to the approving authority within 60 days, the approving authority has a right to revoke the information. In other words, I'm in a position where I look at the information coming in, I look at the accountability, the accuracy of the information to put it into the public files. That's my job. So I'm looking at I have oversight, control of the oversight. I look at the procedures, and then at the end, it's presented to me. I read it, I confirm it, and I put it into the public files, and that's for the public review. That's it. So if any kind of notes I make to keep myself straight, it's personal, it's my private notes, and if the soil evaluator decides not to submit it to the town, and 60 days has lapsed, then that information would have to be repeated if to be used for the on-site septic system. I am not a source of a soil database. I am not the the safety net for a soil evaluator who forgot to send the material in, or maybe it blew out his window as he drove away from the site. I am not a commodity to be made into for selling or transferring the property. My work is not to be used as that. I represent the Board of Health. I have jurisdiction on the site. I take it seriously. If the soil evaluator does not submit the work into the office, it's lost within 60 days. And the work I talked about with engineers I worked with before, and apparently they did not submit the work into the office. So it's gone. But I have institutional knowledge, I have experience, I'm here. I mean, I'm not going to erase my mind, I can't regurgitate and put it into the paper. And I'm not, and the state law prohibits the approving authority to help the land developer. It's right, it's written into the code, and I'd like to show it to you too. And it's also shown that the soil evaluator has responsibility to submit the work into the office. The soil evaluator has responsibility to submit all the work into the office. Has nothing to do with approving authority. I just look at it and I verify it.
Can we just hammer
but I
just
just-
one point to make it clear in my mind?
Okay.
You're saying that all of the forms that were submitted by the soil evaluators having to do with this part of the world are in the file?
No, and even Mr. Gloss's work isn't in there. I was out there, I did perk tests with Mr. Glosser from A to S. I mean, I'm telling you that.
Wait, they were submitted and they're not in the file?
I'm
Are
not,
they-
well, they were never submitted into the file.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
What I'm asking you is if they were submitted, they should be in the file. right?
Correct, that's correct. If they were not submitted, they were not in the file.
Well, all right, that's the key.
Yes.
If they're not submitted, we're not going to make a decision based on them, and nobody can make a design based on them because they don't exist.
Well, because they haven't been brought in, they haven't been approved by the approving authority, by your health agent. I have not, so they're non-existent, exactly.
And there's a statute of limitations of 60 days.
60 days, correct. Well, you can revoke it. Like, say someone came in at 90 days, or someone had something really old. You know, like my predecessor saw some test holes. And I'll look at it, I'll go, well, we can go out there and do work around it and see if it's compatible and see if it's acceptable or not. I mean, there's ways of working with it. But for these sites, these 3 lots, work that has been done out in the field has not been submitted to the office to be approved, to be put into the files. That's why there's that gap.
Presumably the gap is there because back in the day when they were being tested, the soils were being tested, but as soon as people realized that they weren't going to make the 30 minutes an inch, they essentially abandoned the test because they figured, well, we can't work with this, it's not going to help us, and so they then didn't bother to submit to us the file for that test.
Correct. There was one in the file that I saw, and Mr. Domi, apparently, my predecessor, apparently wrote a letter about, which I wrote to Mr. Martin saying, Form 11 and Form 12 is what's for development. That's it. Anything else you got is fluff, it's just talk. And Mr. Domi wrote in his letter saying that he started with a perk test, and it was over 30 minutes, but it was kind of like he was giving out information about the new Title V, which is exciting for everybody in that field. And he knew about it because he wasn't part of the redesign. But he said, you know, but the state's going to change, you're going to probably put it through a higher rate. So it kind of made it really questionable. So if you're a layperson reading that letter, you go, whoa, I might have some land here. In the past it didn't work, but now it's going to work, I'll buy it. But that's for the layperson. But if you're into the soils and looking at Form 11, Form 12, if you looked at those 2 forms that are in the file that Mr. Domi wrote about, you'll see they didn't complete the report, they didn't complete the percolation test. They did the first 3 inches timing, and then they left the 3, they walked away from it. The last 3 can be up to 40, 60, 80, 180, who knows? It's up in the air. When I was out there, Mr. Glosser, we found it. Over 60 minutes, 70 inches, there were 111 inches or so. They were outrageous, or they failed. The soils were too silty and too much clay in it. So it was abandoned or it failed. We walked away from it. Now, Mr. Glosser has not submitted Form 12 into the office, so I can review it and put it into the public file. And it's been over a year or so. I mean, he's got that plan there with a couple holes there that maybe I could accept those test holes right there that he has on the plan as being possibly valid because I did witness it and at least I can see where it is. But the other test holes he did, that's all around here, we don't have a percolation test Form 12 on it. So even if they did come back, I'd go, there's no information. And they go, oh, you saw it? Yeah, I might have seen it, but I can't verify it. And the only thing you can do with on-site septic systems is the Form 11 and Form 12 that's submitted by the soil evaluator, 'cause that's his responsibility from his license. And my responsibility, representing the Board of Health, is looking at the accuracy of it and accepting it into the file 60 days after. That's what I'm there for.
What is in the file then?
Betsy was kind enough to get it.
Right there.
Right here.
Do you have what's in that file?
I believe I do, yes.
Here's the file. Whoops, I'm sorry, you can take a look at it. And
I'm just, so you already have, you understand the information that's in here.
Well, I'm not going to say I understand it all. I'm not an engineer,
Right,
but I
I'm
think I
saying
have.
what you think you have, what's
I
available
think I
to
have
us.
yes.
I'm definitely confused. What are you looking for?
What I'm looking for is there may be information. I'm not looking for any of Wade's personal notes. That's irrelevant to me. All I'm looking for, in particular, well, I'd like to have all of it, but in particular, on Lot 79, you'll see some references to Lot 79, and Wade just talked about that would suggest that the perk tests out there would probably have consistent with the results we got if they were completed.
Is there some other information that we're missing?
not that I know of, because that testing that Mr. Martin's talking about is before my tenure.
So it doesn't sound like we even have anything available.
That's fine. If he had told me that he didn't have it, I wouldn't have written a letter and I
I
wouldn't have
mean,
come in. But
obviously,
I'm
anything
just
that's
trying
in
to get
here,
the
you have to
information,
have.
that's
You have
all.
to have availability, whatever's here.
Right, but he may have logs.
That doesn't sound like
He
that.
may have logs. I'm not looking for personal, I'm looking for logs, because even the chairman at the last hearing said, are there logs? And I'm scratching my head back here saying,
By logs, I should have been clear. I mean, what I'm talking about is,
All right, so
you
it
know,
doesn't sound like it.
this is what we use to make our decision. If it ain't here, we can't use it.
And everything we have is available.
And so if there's something that's not covered in what you're looking at right here, more tests got to get done. Because there's no other source of information that we have that's reliable, that actually meets the code of law submitted by an evaluator, checked off by our agent, and therefore it ends up in here. If that didn't happen, it's not here, we
So-
can't use it.
Just to clarify, there's no other information available on this lot besides what's here.
Not to my knowledge. And Betsy receives all the stuff in the front.
And is that, clear it up?
and you have no logs, factual logs.
Oh, you mean Form 11 and Form 12?
Right, logs. Just
Yeah, that's a
actual
log.
scientific
Wouldn't-
logs on data.
Wouldn't have any
Yeah,
Form
would
11
be-
and Form
why would
12
you?
I'm not asking for
logs.
form, I'm just asking for logs, information that when you observed,
Well, Mr. Martin, my job as the approving authority, I verify the information coming in the office from what I witness out there working with soil evaluators. That's what I do. And
well, that wasn't my question, but my question was, do you have logs that were done based on your observation?
Even if you did, that wouldn't do anything.
Well, it's not part of the file,
irrelevant.
it's
Right,
not, it's
that's what
not
I'm
part of
saying.
what
It
we
would just
use to
be-
make our decision.
It's irrelevant,
That's
'cause
the
you
important
couldn't use it anyhow. But
Right.
if you're looking for old information, there's two other areas that the soil evaluator has to submit work to, the landowner and the designer. So there's two other entities, and you may find some old information. You go past to the old, if you go to the old landowners and ask them if there's any Form 11, Form 12, so they have, or you can go back to the soil evaluators and ask them if they have the work, because they didn't submit it into the office. That's the only way that this office could run, or even on-site septic systems could be approved and carried on through the permitting process to get what you want. Any kind of paperwork floating around it's dangerous. I mean, like the letter that Mr. Domi wrote, because when I was out there, I remember you talking about some past records you had of people writing or people stating like there's a less than 2-minute perk rate. And we're out there going, there's no less than 2-minute perk rate. But it was so vague that we had no clue what anybody did anything. Could have been way out in the wetlands somewhere,
I
who
don't
knows?
recall that, but I don't recall a 2-minute perk rate ever out there.
Well, and also Mr. Domi's letter, it's not complete. It's a thought, but it's not for development. And that's what I wrote to you in the email. It's
No,
not-
I understand it's not for development, that's why we went out and did perks. It's a circular argument now, but the point was, if we had information with logs that showed what that was, that may have been helpful.
Well, in my observation, if you look at that, the only disturbance in that area were those test holes were. Because we were very careful, because we knew there was old work out there. And so Mr. Gloss's work there is showing only certain test holes in that area, and none of that area was disturbed. I mean, that's one way
A
of
lot
saying
of
it.
years have passed, I don't know exactly, that's my point. If I had logs, for lack of a better term.
I haven't been here that long. I mean,
Is there some difference between a log and a Form 11 and 12?
Well, if you had personal notes, you might point you to a better place to do it, but it's not gonna help with your design. You're still
I
gonna have
agree.
to do a test pit.
I'm not looking for personal
Right.
notes, like, you know, pretty good results, terrible results.
Right, that sounds
I'm
like-
looking for factual information.
And that's what
I'm
would have to be
that's the only-
here.
That's the only thing that would be helpful to you folks.
Right.
To me, that's all I'm looking for.
Right,
I'm
and
not
that's
looking
it.
for innuendo.
There could be no design unless it's based on, like Wade is saying, those forms. So, I said, best case, you could try to, maybe some sort of personal note would say, hey, this soil appeared better over here, but I don't think that exists. I think at this point, it's just, you have to kind of follow the rules.
And improving authorities prohibited to help the land use owner.
I mean-
It's stated
Well, I'm not
clearly in
asking
the
for help, I'm
code.
just asking for documents.
Well, yeah, right,
Yeah,
but
so
a
it's-
document to be admissible to this board is a document that starts with the evaluator in the field who has the log,
Right.
has the information, fills it, puts the information onto a form, gives it to our group. Wade takes a look at it and then checks it against his remembrances of what happened in the field. And if his beliefs of what happened out there match up with what's been, said in this form, we say, all right, it goes in there. That's admissible. That is something we can use for our purposes, but also certainly is available for the design engineer to go ahead and build a design up for the system. That's the way it's supposed to work. But unfortunately, there's a big piece missing in all of that, which is we never actually got the submission from the soil evaluator that we could check against.
Mr. Glosser you're working with, whatever he has, you have it available to you, right?
So my question through you, Mr. Chairman, to Wade, if there's any information that you think would be that should be in the file, that would be appropriate to have in the file that Mr. Glosser hasn't submitted, if you can let myself know, or Mr. Glosser, because I'm under the impression from what he's suggested to me, that he's submitted everything. So I'm gonna-
Maybe he
I don't-
has.
I don't know, but
No.
if you, I don't need
We
to
don't
know
have it
tonight.
then, right? Okay.
It's over a year ago. It's
Well,
irrelevant now.
we filed this plan a year ago too, but,
It's irrelevant.
well, I think he submitted things after that plan, but,
I'm not sure. You have to ask Betsy at the front end or the office.
Okay,
Well, he can come in during business hours just to check to see if
sure.
that has happened or not.
That's, so I just want to close that loop if
Yeah.
I can, so I don't know whether or not it's a full submittal or not. I was under the impression it was,
Well,
it may or may not be, I don't know.
well, his license requires him to do it if it's going to be used for on-site septic work. If he decides not to submit it in, then it's not going to be information that we can use, and it'll probably have to be repeated.
All right, we'll
And
just
just to
have,
be consistent, when we get in, if we get to the point of a formal hearing, I would just ask, and I'll remind the board then, not to be difficult, but just to remind the board that let's focus on the information in front of us. Let's not focus on things out here that have nothing, that was the discussion last time when I sat here in July, and it got off the rails, and I didn't want to impose more time.
the only thing that we're probably not going, this is new construction, so chances are, we're not going to have a new hearing on this. This should be just filled out, made Wade happy, he reviews it, and it's done. So, there's a good chance we won't talk about this again as a board. I mean, if it's done to Wade, I think the idea before was, hey, we have test pits, we want Wade to accept these and make the system work. And the argument was, well, we need more because of the size of the system. If that satisfies Wade, Wade does the prelim review, we don't see it again.
And also, they did ask if the board would reduce the size of the system
Well,
by
again,
avoiding
it could-
this garbage
Well,
garner, too.
Let's be fair about that. We only asked, we weren't asking for a variance. We only asked for if we could reduce the size based on a three-bedroom. We certainly, we've never asked for a variance. That word came up by one of the board members.
What else are you asking for then?
We said, what if we reduced, because that system, from what I'm told, is designed to support 6 bedrooms, but 4 bedrooms under the local, under Title V, that will support 6 bedrooms of a group home, apartment building, or that type of a thing. Under the local regulations, that'll support 4 bedrooms. So when John Glazer came in, we were just looking for a back and forth discussion on,
But that would be a variance to our
no,
regulations.
we weren't looking for a variance. We said, because of the size of the system, and you wanted more testing because of the size, we said, how about if we came in, we'll keep it the same size, the system the same size, up to 6 bedrooms under the state and 4 under the local. But we'll agree that it'll be designed for, we'll call it a 3, and it's all it can ever be is a 3-bedroom. We didn't ask for it, we were going above and beyond.
But you wouldn't do that, because then you'd risk that system failing. If you were to make a larger system for a smaller house, you're not gonna feed the microbes in the soil, and it's gonna die out. That would be a detriment to do
Mr.
it.
Glasgow at the time had presented two other things, and I'm not the expert on these, fast systems, and Wade would know. Whatever he proposed, kind of the Cadillac system to address those concerns. And the confusion was, it was looked upon that we were asking for a variance, when quite the opposite. No, we're going to go above and beyond.
If the plan's submitted, Wade's gonna review it. If it doesn't need a variance, we're not gonna hear about it. So Wade's gonna be the one to tell us, they're asking for a variance. Actually, your designer will, he'll know if you're asking for a variance. or just going
We're not
under
asking for
regs.
one on that one, or the...
So again, if you're not asking for a variance, it's gonna go through Wade, it'll be reviewed, it'll be run to the regulations, Title V, our regs. If it works, great. Well,
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
In the back.
But we have no filing in front of us for this
The question is on testing. Is there a certain number of tests we need? Do we know that yet? If we go back to that site, into that leaching area,
Well, at
is there any
this,
guidance?
at this stage, your designer should be very careful of what he does out there, he or she. It'd be really wise if they stake out the area with the size of the field, they would stake it out, mark it out where they wanted to do it. And the best way of doing it is like a number 5 on a side of a dice. 2 and 1 minute.
Would it be of any benefit to the agent, to the chairman, to the board, if we had boring samples done, that were done under the control of custody by scientists and so forth, to show, under that design, to show at the right levels what those soils are?
You have to meet the regulations for Title V and our health regulations. I don't recall us having any borings.
Well, the
in
Title
there.
V does say
All right, so,
testing. We have the...
and if that's the case, let me hear you out here. Your designer can work with our agent on this. It's not a discussion for the board to have, because now we're getting into the realm of variances and things like that. If it meets the regulations, your designer can talk to the agent about it to make it work, that's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Mark, just because now you're a lay person, for an on-site septic system to be designed, it requires deep observation holes. And it requires a certain number of perk tests. That's in the state code. It's clearly stated out. So if you have your soil evaluator, he would have to know this law, or he or she wouldn't be a soil evaluator. So the borings would not be acceptable. Scientists analyzing soils, stuff would not be acceptable, because they wouldn't be following through the state requirements.
I'm just saying to complement that. I'm not saying exclusively. I'm just saying to complement the
Well,
perk
that'd
test.
be extra expense to you. If you got successful perk rates, there's no need to do any kind of other sampling or any kind of
Well, I'm
scientific
saying-
work. But to take
Go
its
along with
place,
the perk test we have.
to take its to take its
Complement
place,
that.
it won't work.
Not to take their place, to complement it. Because I have the groundwater issue. It's not a perk issue out there, it's a groundwater issue.
It's both issues out there.
Well, the perk rates are consistently in the zone, but I don't want to make the argument.
But the perk rates aren't consistent in that area. That's the question.
Well,
And if you look at the
that's
soil.
that's why I
maps-
wanted the logs, because everything we have and everything in your files, whether it was Domi out there or us out there, on that particular area, show the 34 to the 37. If they weren't going, we either...
What logs?
It's just a layman's term for whatever data was
We just
gathered
went
that
through,
day.
there's no more data, right? We just
Fine.
went through that, I
Well,
thought.
the only data we have is it's in files.
Right, and then, and there's
So-
other
so-
data that
Other
your
than
engineer
ins-
has.
other
Right,
than-
and those show in there that you can read them yourself when you have the time.
Or other than memory, because the soil evaluator didn't submit work in. So it's gone by memory.
Let's clarify a point you're making, though. I'm not going to look through all these files right now, but right from your memory, there are test holes out there that were evaluated, and the numbers that you saw were in excess of 60 minutes an inch?
The only
There you go.
perk rates I've seen are in the file, and there's also some are missing, because Mr. Galassa did not submit all the perk tests that was performed when I was out there with them. We started at perk test A and went all the way to S. It's a lot of
So,
perk
and
tests.
I just want to make sure, all the information that you've asked for us, has been given to you, that's available. So when you're referring to these logs that don't exist, correct?
That's one
Well,
of-
they
if
don't
I-
exist in the town files because the
But the
soil
ones you're
regulator-
saying that don't exist are the ones that Mr. Glosser did.
Correct, because they were not,
Right.
they don't exist because they were not submitted to
Right,
the
I get that,
town.
right, but I'm saying, so the information you're asking of us, everything that we have available, you have, or you have the right to have. There's no missing information that we have that you're not getting.
Fantastic.
That's what I want to make sure. that,
Okay, if
'cause-
you're telling me that, I believe you.
Okay, because the only information that you understand that doesn't exist anymore, your engineer performed. So you should have access to it. We don't.
Right, right.
And also.
So can
Frank-
we have the logs?
And Frank Gallagher, and Frank Gallagher was another engineer I worked in the past, but he did not submit any forms.
Okay,
into
so
the
all the
office.
information-
That's just another piece of information that could be helpful, as the court case says. That's
Well,
all I'm
we don't
getting
have
at.
it.
Well, I'm not
If
here
you
to
don't have
help.
them, that's fine.
I'm sorry, but I'm not here to help the landowner. I'm here to see that the information that the soil evaluation, the soil evaluator that he's witnessed, that it's accurate going to the files. That's my job. I'm not here to be a database guru in the area telling people how to develop and how to build septic systems. My job is to make sure that the work I'm seeing out there comes into the office in the public record accurately. Mr. Frank Gallagher was an engineer that went out there, he did the work. He did not submit the work into the office. The accuracy is gone. I don't know what he did. I can't remember what he did, but I do know it's high groundwater. I do have a memory, institutional memory. We went
So
out there with
all,
a backhoe.
all
I do-
the information we have
so you need-
available,
I'm sorry, so you need to see Mr. Frank Gallagher. I just gave you his name.
everything we have, you have, I understand. From these files, you have, or at least have access to. There's been none that's been denied
Correct.
to
No,
you.
I've had full access to the
Okay.
files here. That's never been a problem.
All right.
Never been a problem, getting files from Betsy Healy.
And so John has, you said A through S or something?
Yeah, look at the leaching area. There's a perk above it. I think it's S. I think that's one of the last ones we did.
All right, so the question, I guess, in my mind now,
So as a
is
reviewer,
where is all of the, where are all those evaluator logs?
they're,
We don't have
they're
them.
underneath the ownership of the soil evaluator.
And quite honestly, because a lot of them,
Or where,
most
out
of
here?
the work was done on 77, which doesn't even appear on here. We focused on 77. 77 was a difficult spot. Late in the day, we got down here. We started getting we started getting good results.
And this was all done by your engineer, correct?
That's correct.
Sloss's work, right? So we have data in here that's
But we don't
not
have
showing
it.
up in our file because we never got the.
Well, the two test holes down below, by where your elbow is, probably represents two of those test holes.
There's two, 5 and 6.
Yeah, and one of them wasn't completed because it got saturated. I think there's three holes in that plan? No?
Here?
Yeah, on the
There's
leaching area.
6.
Is it just two or there's three?
There's two shown here for
There's
profiles.
2 down here, but there's dots up here for more locations. I'm looking at 6, I don't see 5.
Okay.
Here's that's pit 5.
So are there,
There's 5 and 6.
okay, just 5 and 6, and then S way out in the back?
I'm not sure about that, but there are other indications of tests that were done.
S.
All right, what about P? What about
yeah.
O?
Correct, yeah, so what, that's S, no, what is that?
This is
That's
5 and 6.
5 and 6, and where is 5 and 6?
Here's 6, and I saw 5 a second ago.
Yeah, test pit 6.
Mr. Chairman, can we
So-
kind of get back to the crux of the issue here? We have a letter in front of us that's asking for a release of soil logs that apparently we don't have.
We don't have them.
So I'd just like to focus on that. We don't have a filing in front of
But
us.
going back to this again, which is a really good exercise, now looking at that and looking at the files and what's being brought into the office, I'd respond back to the engineer saying that it needs more soil work because it's inconsistent. soil.
Well,
we
yeah,
talked
look
about
at your
that.
dice. Points here and here?
Understood, right.
Ain't got 'em.
Successful permits, and then.
No, I understand that. My position is the soils aren't inconsistent. It's the groundwater that variable. Not, you can dig that soil and you get to a certain level.
But as approving authority, I have jurisdiction of the site, and I'm not trying to pull the trump card or something like that. I'm very knowledgeable of that area, of the soils, and of difficult soils. It spreads all the way down to Winston Street. I mean, that subdivision is really difficult also.
We are going around in circles on
All
this
right.
stuff.
All right, so
Thank you for your
you
time.
got them. You got the information that we need.
Thank you.
We have. All right. After that, on our agenda next, minutes from September. Let's see, sent around some minutes
The 12th? No, it's
from the 12th of
September.
September. You weren't here, Jeff, if that's not ringing a bell.
apparently I would. Oh, absolutely. I don't remember anything about that one.
So I motion that we accept the minutes as,
Well, I had a couple suggestions.
okay.
On this particular one. I thought might be a little better, perhaps worded a little differently. The first paragraph, for example, is the one that's sort of the crux of this Abbeville issue. My suggestion would be to change it a bit. And here's what I've written, and I can send the electronic version to Betsy. But I said, in my proposal, I explained that the board was in receipt of an email from Mr. Murphy. And by the way, I suggest that the two people from Lawrence Street who were here be among the others who were actually in attendance at the meeting. So we put their names up in the box. The Mr. Murphy, in which he expressed concern that large changes in grade that are proposed would require blasting, and that blasting could open up veins in the underlying bedrock that might allow pollutants from a solid waste site on the property to contaminate neighboring wells. That, I think, sort of, in fewer words, says what that paragraph says. So I suggest we maybe replace it. Then the next piece, which is unfortunately, well, it breaks up the flow between the first and third paragraphs. But there's a paragraph that says, Mr. Murphy said that he and his neighbors pull from the same resources. That's a little jargony. I'm not even quite sure how you interpret that. But I thought we'd just get rid of that sentence because Mr. Murphy is playing the role of, engineer here, and he ain't one, I don't think. So why don't we just get rid of that sentence and then go on after, I said after additional discussion about the project, Mr. Gilbert asked Mr. Murphy and Mr. Mastro why they thought the proposed earth removal would require blasting. And then Mr. Mastro gave his response, and then Wade said, yeah, but he's checked with the engineer, and no blasting is contemplated. So anyway, so I didn't change the substance, but I just kind of changed the wording a little bit. Okay? So if you're willing to say, move to approve as amended?
I move to approve the amended minutes of September 12th, 2017 meeting.
I will second that motion. All in favor? Aye. I'll send this to you, Betsy. I'll leave this with you.
Sure.
I'll send you an electronic copy.
Please.
All right. Correspondence review. You have a correspondence? Mom?
I don't have any.
Oh, okay.
Makes it easier.
Okay, no.
I do have a question about something that I asked.
Yeah, I did make a call way back, and
And I can't read.
and Bob did get back to me, and I owe him a return call, so I don't have that response for you yet.
So we were talking.
It was
about-
the contaminant in a drinking water well that was found, and it was the I believe it was
Dioxin?
yeah, something like that. And it was a question of, was this an action level item, or was that concentration, what was that, and why didn't it trigger any flags and stuff like that? So I still owe the answer on that, and when I do talk to Bob, I will send it out through email. I apologize, I didn't it's been so long, and he did get back to me right away, and then I got put off, and so I will follow up with that.
All right. We have several MRC issues here under new business.
Could I tell you, I'll get into the MRC, but first tell you about, I attended an all-day meeting with the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, and I have a certificate of completion.
What is it for? For what?
as,
Well, that's,
for the Board of Health Training Program.
gonna hang that on your wall?
I don't, no, I'm just gonna put it in the paper. But anyway, it was a really interesting all-day meeting, and I don't know if you folks have ever attended one of these meetings. But there were many subjects on workshops that you could attend, and one of them had to do with the tobacco regulations. And the letter that we sent to the Public Health Committee about updating the tobacco regulations. And our regulations are, you updated last year, 2016, so that you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes, and electronic cigarettes are not, you can't sell them, someone that's not 21 can't buy them, that was in the regulation. But the one thing that I was focused on was that pharmacies, medical institutions, and a pharmacy being a medical institution, wouldn't be allowed to sell cigarettes. And so, having said that, we sent this letter to the Public Health Committee asking them to endorse the bill, House Bill, I forget the exact number, 2864. And so at this meeting, the meeting that I attended, it was brought to our attention by the council for the Mass Association of Health Boards, that each town could amend their regulations and add this to it, that we would prohibit the sale of tobacco in pharmacies. And currently, 152 communities across the state do that. Now, I asked her how long the bill, when she thought the bill would come out of committee, and she thought maybe in March. Both the Senate and the House have are in favor of it, but it's in committee because they can't agree on who's going to actually, I guess one of them has to say it came from the House or it came from the Senate.
Sponsor it, so to speak.
Well, no, it's sponsored, it's been approved, and
Okay, good.
more or less. So anyway, my question to her was, well, should we adopt, amend our own? Is it going to take another year for this to go through, or can we amend our own regulations? And she said that she would help us, but it would be pretty simple after she looked at our regulations. So I would like to make a motion, or, I don't know, a discussion about adding to our current tobacco regulations that we would prohibit the sale of tobacco in pharmacies, which would mean Walgreens in this town.
And we discussed this a little bit, I thought, maybe 2 meetings ago.
Yeah.
But wasn't Walgreens going to do that anyway? Weren't they going to put that in voluntarily?
CVS apparently
CVS
has
did,
done it.
okay, maybe I was
But,
wrong.
yeah,
Okay.
but I don't know what the status
Okay.
is with Walgreens. And I know from her presentation, her name is Cheryl Sabara, and she's an attorney, that she's they're having lots of issues with Walgreens.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
I spoke wrong on that, so.
Issues, in other words, I shouldn't say issues. I mean that they're not stepping up to the plate like CVS stepped up to the plate and just prohibited the sale of tobacco in pharmacies.
So we have to go the same route with the public discussion and put them out
Have a
that we're
hearing.
going to do that.
She actually suggested that you should have a hearing. She said that you folks probably had done that before.
Yep.
How did that go the last time? Was
Fine,
there
I believe,
discussion?
right?
I don't
don't
think
see
we
if
had anybody,
Talk against, right?
I think at the end, there was no opposition of any kind. I thought early on there was some, mostly casual, like somebody showing up for a hearing like
I don't recall
half an hour
anyone
late,
talking against it.
after we had,
after
like,
we'd already closed off the
closed.
conversation.
Oh, yes, there was,
Remember that
yes,
upstairs?
yes, I think I do remember that.
But we should, post the fact that we are considering whatever the language looks like it might.
Well, this was
Laura.
just from her slide presentation. She said she would help us put together the exact language, but, I mean, if you
Well, we
got...
should have it pretty much from before, right? I mean, just got to amend it to add in that
prohibit
But there's got to be
sale.
some kind of whereas at the beginning of this that says.
Well, we must have it from the old regulation, we put the 21 or over to buy it, right? It's the same thing, we just have to change it to say now pharmacies included as far as
We
selling.
probably
No,
need
but there's
to
got to be a
add-
reason why we're singling out pharmacies. So we need to
Well, because
have,
they're medical institutes, that's the way the
we
new
need
law,
we need the
medical
whereas piece to go in
facilities.
front of this. It
Yeah.
says, whereas pharmacies are to make people healthy.
Well, what do
Or-
we say to the
Well,
convenience
somebody
stores?
must have a model.
Yeah,
That was just
and
'cause they sold them.
she said
That was not a-
she had a model. If I could just, I told her that I wanted to have a discussion with you folks, make sure everybody was, how you felt about it. If you were in agreement, then I would
Because we're talking
pursue
about
it
no
with
sale
her.
of cigarettes of any kind to anybody, right?
In
No, 21.
Walgreens,
Oh,
right.
oh, they're selling it
See, this is
all.
different. This
Okay,
is
yeah,
not
yeah,
21.
yeah.
Now,
All right, my
Walgreens
bad.
cannot sell
At all.
cigarettes, right, just like
Yeah, so we
CVS
need to
does not
explain
a
why
cigarette product.
We should be targeting
Right.
the drugstore.
Because it is a medical facility and should be taking care of the health of people, not destroying their health by selling cigarettes. Now, they probably sell a lot of other things.
Candy
but-
bars, too.
Barely candy
Well,
bars.
yeah.
I buy all my candy there.
They probably even sell carbonated beverages that have
They
sugar in them, too.
high sugar, too.
Yeah, I
We
know.
just got a list of
Grams of
things we're
sugar.
gonna ban.
That's a little problem here.
Well, yeah, but,
We sound like
No, no.
Mayor Bloomberg or something.
Yeah, you're gonna
But
ban
we
the
all
toys?
I mean,
agree
if you're gonna go down that route, I mean, it's
that,
just,
you know,
nothing's good.
the number one cause of lung cancer is cigarette smoking. So, and we're all paying for that. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, it is.
There's no, gray area here.
Yeah, well, especially, we could time this with the new health warnings that are now coming out.
There,
But,
the tobacco industry was supposed to have, I haven't seen it, but posted in the newspapers that cigarette smoking causes.
Like right now, it's supposed to be
Yes,
coming out.
it was, no, it was supposed to happen on November 26th, but I haven't seen it in any of the huge papers. I don't know if anyone else has seen it. And there was supposed to be ads on television.
Yeah.
This was, a judge said, okay, it's time, you have to do this now. You've been dragging your feet long enough.
Like a decade or two.
So, but I have not seen it.
All right, so if we're basically proposing a regulation change which impacts one business in town, we owe it to whoever the manager is of the local Walgreens.
Sure,
To let
absolutely.
them know
Absolutely,
what's on our mind and have a public hearing.
absolutely. But, I mean, our job is to protect the public health. And cigarettes is, a real problem. And I don't know if anyone's looked at, they're gone into Walgreens and just kind of paid attention, but I don't see a huge sign there
it's
that
not.
says cigarette smoking is hazardous to your health and by the, it's supposed to be 48 inches or something, the sign. And also, I don't know if you guys are aware of flavored cigarettes, are you folks?
Yeah, we had
Are aware?
the
Had
They
that
sell,
discussion.
Yeah.
yeah,
We saw
flavored,
products.
We
We
had
saw
samples.
samples.
I
yeah,
think Betsy took them.
yeah. So,
I gave them back
We
to
don't know
them,
where they
though.
went after that.
I gave them, I'm like, here,
There's
take
a weird
these.
smell
We're-
of cherry sometimes.
Pina
All
colada.
right, so I think the answer is the board is interested in adding this additional restriction, but we do need to basically.
I can get the wording,
Mhm.
and then we'll go from there. Is that correct?
Well, can you circulate the wording around, so maybe
Sure.
at the next meeting, we can do two things. One is to say yes to the wording, or make changes if we feel the need to, and also post a public hearing. And also contact Walgreens, because there's only one business in town that's impacted by this.
Okay. Sounds good. The other thing that was talked about a lot was the opioid crisis, and I probably should have made copies for you folks, but just to see the increased incidence of deaths from from overdose, and it's interesting that our own little community here in 2012 had one death from opioid overdose, and
That was what, 2012?
right, in 2016, 4 deaths. I mean, every single community, it's skyrocketed.
What is Franklin?
Franklin went from 2 in 2012 to 5. So everyone's kind of doubled,
Wow.
you know. New Bedford, 26 to 55 in 2012. But-
Wow.
Almost double
Yeah.
what you just said. Wow, it's amazing.
But anyway, it was a question, I was just going to maybe have a discussion with the police chief about it, because I'm not quite sure if this number has to do with the Correctional Institute, although I wouldn't think they have overdoses there.
No, that's a good question, though, because that's
I
definitely a
mean, people
possibility.
bring things in. I
Right,
guess,
exactly.
Yeah, they
you know.
do smuggle
That
stuff.
would be interesting
Um,
to hear that.
Anyway, so it was a good meeting. Now, getting to the MRC, so each month we've gotten a few more people. I don't remember how many came in December. You don't have the actual number.
I don't have the actual number.
But they were new people. And so we have a plan to have a CPR class on the 29th. And then our next meeting, though, is January 8th. People are asking the question about, you know, what are our emergency plans in the town? And I guess we're supposed to have a few different emergency plans, but the one that this board is responsible for is the emergency dispensing site plan. And we have to have that plan to be in compliance with the funding that we get from public health emergency preparedness money. Now, I'm not quite sure. Can you tell us how much money we get, Betsy, from that?
5,000.
That's it, 5,000? Okay. But if there were an outbreak and we needed to vaccinate, or we needed to give prophylactic antibiotics or something like that, the stockpile comes down from the federal government to the state and then to the local communities. And so each community is supposed to have a plan. Now, this plan, I couldn't get a date on it. When was this developed, this plan?
Back in,
You remember this?
Doesn't have a date.
Because it doesn't. But the problem with, maybe you'll probably come up with something as you're going along, as I'm talking, but I also spoke with the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for Region 4A about this plan. And because he and Betsy have communicated in the past, and he said it's really not a plan. We couldn't execute this, because it really just describes what you
reads
need
more like
to
a
do.
story.
But
that was
it's not,
2012. That's the one that they helped me develop, so I'm not sure.
yeah. But for whatever reason, if you read through it, it's not
Yeah.
executable.
It's what should happen.
But it's not step by step. This
No.
is what we do. Where is the school? What- yeah,
Volunteers
well, so
are
many.
important, it says.
So,
True, very true.
so I guess, so having spoken with Tyler, I said, so how can we, so this individual's name is Tyler Bonacorsi, and he works out of the Cambridge Health Alliance. He said that the state is finally going to come up with a boilerplate form, or to put together an executable plan.
Uh-oh. You're in here too, man.
An executable plan. So coming in February and March, there will be a workshop, about a 4-hour workshop, to discuss how to put together an executable plan.
All right.
So I
So this
kinda-
front end is more philosophical, it's not turning into an action plan.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But we need to do this. And the folks on the MRC, they're very enthusiastic about helping out with making things happen. You know, they just don't want to sit around. So I'm thinking that that I could go to this workshop and maybe bring another person, and we could, with the group, work on the plan, take pieces of it, and then bring it to the board.
What do you mean, another person?
Well, I just don't want to go to a workshop by myself because I won't hear everything. I
sets
want
of
two
users.
people.
Right, but I'm saying another board member, or?
Oh, no, I'm
Oh,
an
then we have to post
MRC
it.
member.
Oh, you getting scared?
Oh, do
Have to
you,
post
you
a
guys
meeting.
can come. Yeah, you said that you're.
I thought you meant an MRC person.
Oh, yeah, that's right, okay. I just wanted to sing everybody,
But,
two
no,
board
if
members.
you
I
would
think we'd
like
have a,
to
we'd have
That would be
a
fine.
quorum.
I was there for the first MRC meeting.
No.
actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's going to be after somebody's come along with at least a template for us to go by?
Right, right. But in the meantime, he's also going to send me, he's going to ask if one of the local towns will provide us with their plan. Because there are, correct me if I'm wrong, 33 communities in Region 4A, and only 2 of us don't have a plan. You have to submit the plan to them that is executable.
Oh.
So
Well,
we're.
How about our good friends in Walpole? Can we just
I
take a
could,
look at
I
theirs?
could ask Robin.
Robin would be very...
I have a, yeah, she would,
Oh, it's just nice,
to
Robin.
see her plan. And maybe get started on this, so. But then, once you put together a plan, you have to, like I said, you have to have an exercise, you know, you have to have a drill. And
Right.
so we have to be prepared to do this. But
You wanna run
I
with
think
it,
it's
we'll
the
do
right
it.
thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, especially, now that I look at this.
Well, exactly.
I mean,
said
this had
it's
to
an
come from
outline of
somebody's
how.
other template.
and you-
and guess what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was provided by the state.
And this goes back to, you need someone to run with it, and,
Okay.
you know, for whatever reason, we had someone start and stop and whatever, so,
Okay,
you know, like we've said before, tell us what we need to do to help you if you want,
Okay.
but run with it.
okay. That's where I'm at.
This is
at
more
the
like a
moment.
description of what a plan needs as much as it is the
Exactly.
plan.
So you signed it.
So I will tell the folks at the MRC meeting that you folks are all behind us, and we're going to
100%.
get this,
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
okay,
Yes,
we'll
yes.
get this off the ground, okay?
And if we need help from us, let us know. If we have to do something else, absolutely.
If
yeah.
you want to come to the workshop, that's fine,
Let us
too.
know. Tom
Anything
will,
but that, yeah.
Tom is home.
Well, if you
Okay.
get another volunteer from MRC, it'd be a nice way to include and bring them into engagement with
Mhm.
the process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you
So
know
how many
anybody.
people are actually involved in it? You gonna
Well,
talk about that?
I can't remember. I mean, on the email list, we have you folks on the email list too, but I would probably say 10 or 12 folks.
Actively engaged?
Yeah.
That's nice, good
Right.
number.
And, well, you'll get the minutes. Betsy's going to send out the minutes. Dr., you know Eileen Siegel, she gave a
drove her car.
presentation. Oh, that's right. You were here. So she gave a presentation on
Oh, really?
It's a
No
cool
kidding,
car.
yeah.
emergency preparedness for your pets. And we need another plan in this town too, called a local emergency management plan, which comes down through, I think, the selectmen. But I'll give you more information about that as well as we go forward. Okay, and if we have that plan, then pet emergency preparedness would be included in that, in sheltering, if we ever needed sheltering.
Mhm.
Okay. So I think that's all I have.
Could the emergency dispensing site plan be incorporated into our emergency?
I think it has to be part of that as well.
Yep.
But I think the authority for the emergency dispensing site comes through the Board of Health because of the funding.
Good.
And because, I don't know, you have to get medical people involved, we'll have to, and I guess Board of Health has probably more resources for that. I don't know, with your Visiting Nurses Association. And there is no medical director for the town, though, right? No.
So the CPR class on the 29th, have we made that kind of publicly known at all somehow?
We sent it to our MRC members, yes. There were 12 spots.
Oh,
It's
okay,
full.
it's just the
Yeah, it's
full,
full,
it's
yeah.
just the MRC, it's not
Yeah.
open to public, it's.
It was open to the public. I did have a few town employees sign
But all
up?
the spots are filled, it's not
All
like
the
some,
spots are
okay.
filled,
all right.
yeah.
But there is, we were told from our MRC coordinator that there is another training that's going to take place in Framingham. So if you're an MRC member, you could register in Framingham and it would be free. So the CPR course is free for anyone who's registered as an MRC member, but
It was
$50 if
for
you.
non-members.
So, and I'm not quite sure about when I say registered with the MRC, they also have to register with Mass Response, that's our
Right, that's part of their
registration.
registration. yeah.
Right, so even though we're sending you folks out the minutes and trying to keep you up to
Right,
date.
you have to do all the registration
you
and
would need
Cory,
to get
Cory
registered
check.
to,
Okay, no, I was just
Take
curious, I didn't know
part
if
in
it
the
was available to the
trainings.
public, because they knew about it, but it sounds like it's all
yeah.
filled and everything else.
We were
Okay.
gonna open it up to the public if, you know,
didn't
if there were
get enough,
extra
yeah.
spots, but we
Didn't
filled it.
happen. Okay.
And in the future, we'll probably have a basic first aid training. So it's also, it's CPR and AED training. And then, and I think it was Narcon training as well with the CPR.
Great, I signed up, I'm going.
Okay. Well, I'll serve cookies. Tea, okay.
Is that it?
That, I think, that's it for me. Thank
But on a related topic,
you.
we have a contract here from the Walpole V&A.
Hmm.
Is this the same one we've seen many, many times before?
It is, you have a copy of it in your packet, it is, I think, the exact same contract.
Any changes that we have to be aware of and everything?
Total of $25.75?
Right, divided into 12 monthly payments
Yeah.
of $214.58.
You know, since we're a couple months behind schedule here.
Motion to accept the Walpole Area Visiting Nurse contract as presented?
I just have one question, is, because I haven't really looked at this. Does it talk about them reporting to the state our reportable diseases? Does it say
Yeah,
that?
they do the Maven system.
Yeah, where does it
Should
say
be.
that?
Prepare
Does
statistical
anybody say-
reports as required by the
Yep.
MDPH.
Yep.
Okay, then as long as it's on there. Okay. Oh, here you go.
Investigation of follow-up as necessary with individuals who have communicable disease.
I just- The only question I have that was brought up at the, again, this meeting was, do we ever do evaluations of our agents? And this is a job description, right? Or not? This is, yes, a job description, I guess, for the, because they could send out more than one nurse. It's not necessarily just one nurse. Do you always get just one nurse? I mean, I know it was
Well, we
very-
have one contact public health nurse, but
Okay.
there are other nurses that
Some
do
providers.
provide services.
Yeah.
Okay, so this contract is not really an agent like
No,
Wade
no,
is an
no.
No.
agent? Okay.
It's the whole
all right.
V&A.
All right, so let's just work on this. I think this is fine.
In that case, you can go up for more than one problem, yeah, like home visit and stuff.
Right.
And I think they make a lot of money through third-party billing.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of insurance companies, money behind us. If there's no other questions, we have a motion to approve in a second.
Okay, I motion that we approve the contract for the Walpole area visiting nurse.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have a copy of this to sign,
Yeah.
Betsy?
Start with you.
Read one.
Anyway, oh,
It's
do we
gotta
all
be-
have to sign it? What do you mean?
Yeah,
Just all
it's-
sign the top area, or?
Okay.
Just somewhere toward the
I
top.
need a majority.
Oh, after that comes our good friend from Marlboro,
Controversial.
Dover
Not
Sherburne, and a few other
not
places.
anymore.
too, Jeff.
And our total budget for his services is $3,300 for the year.
And that's fine, have we even used that?
Yeah, no, we
Is that-
pretty much stick with that,
Yeah.
so.
Does that get us 1 or 2
It
inspections?
typically gives us 2 inspections.
We don't need any more, we're still okay with that?
Yeah, no, we've been okay.
It's 2 inspections, is that what you said, for each,
Yeah.
each facility?
Yeah, each of our restaurants.
And actually, the Chinese restaurant that's down at across from Four Kicks, it's not even a
It's
restaurant.
not there anymore.
Right? Yeah, so there's not even
Yeah.
anyone there, right? That's too bad.
Right, they closed.
I noticed that too.
All right, motion to accept the contract for Mark Orm Sanitarian as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pick one of these to sign, or we need the
Do
original?
you have the original?
Just sign this?
Here,
Oh,
if
you
you
want-
want to just sign that one.
Floor drain regs.
But my question about reviews, do you do annual reviews of the agents?
Do we do the reviews?
We
They're-
don't.
They're required to be certified. They have to meet the certification requirements.
Like a job performance
Yeah,
review?
mhm.
Well, I'm a contractor, I'm not an employee.
Yeah. So is that different than an agent? What's the difference between an agent and a contractor? I don't know, is it a definition?
Still me. I just-
No, I'm
He's
I'm not,
He's not an employee of the town.
Yeah, I came in through a contractual.
okay. What, and Mark?
Is also a
Same
contractor.
thing.
Consultant, yeah, they're consultants.
Okay,
They work as
So-
consultants for
As
us.
is
Okay.
VNA, for that matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
In the resumes and.
That's interesting that that was brought up. I don't know why it was brought up then. To do
Well, agents of the
annual
board do
reviews.
include town employees, though, like the.
In some towns, maybe.
Well, like the registrar.
Yeah,
or
but
the-
they
not
would
registrar,
always
the
be
town clerk.
reviewed.
The town clerk is the agent of the board.
Yeah, but they would, no, that's different. Under their own department, they would be reviewed.
And sometimes the town manager would evaluate the employees or department heads.
Right, that was totally different. They were talking about contract agents. But each year, you can either approve or not approve the contract, right?
Or,
Yeah.
it's a 3-year contract that we
I see.
have with PSC, which is Wade is an employee of PSC.
Okay. Just a question.
All right. So let's talk a bit about the need for floor drain regulations.
Well,
If you want to build a new well,
yep, everyone has them that has the zone 2, so.
I found some literature relating to the hazardous waste tight tanks. One's on the form for hazardous waste industrial tank. I found it on the permit itself. I'm not sure how legal that is, but it's saying, it talks about all floor drains,
Thank you.
except that serving only sanitary facilities shall be discharged into a tight collection tank and taken away by a licensed waste hauler.
right?
Such floor drains shall not be discharged to any septic system, dry well, or any other surface or subsurface discharge point. That's underneath this application under general conditions. I'm not sure how legal that is. And then, I was looking through some old regulations, and I found out in the old Title V regulations locally, you did have you did have a sentence in the back of it. No floor drains from such facilities, because there's a section dealing with special industrial and commercial requirements. You had, no floor drains from such facilities except those serving on the sanitary facilities shall be discharged to an on-site disposal system.
Right.
And that's pretty much in Title V also.
Yeah, there is, There are model Board of Health floor drain regulations from DEP here.
Might be wise to pursue that.
Yeah, I think we just, because these are kind of like the boilerplate ones you're gonna see from just about any town. So
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
them
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of spread throughout our old regulations
Oh,
doesn't
I
make
know,
sense
I know,
anymore.
but Tom mentioned remembering in the past.
Oh, yeah.
This is the only thing I could find. Betsy looked.
Somehow I
also.
remember them without actually voting for them. Or saving a copy somewhere because we can't find it.
Well, Picus is in the application form. It's written in there as general conditions.
Now, it sounds like we need this to get the new well kind of approved, correct? And for the size of our town, we don't have, I wouldn't imagine, I mean, we have some areas where it's industrial areas, but we don't have so many buildings that have these in there. We know we have some, we do.
Yeah.
But my suggestion would be if we can have, Wade, can you look through these and just kind of give us one that's
Sure.
really straightforward and boilerplate like this one, fill in the blanks? So
sure.
we have something on record. We can always amend these later as it comes, but let's get them approved as soon as we can to hell off the
How
well.
about we
But
do it right
here-
now?
here.
How about we just
Okay,
scratch
let's do
out
that then.
where it
I'm
says
fine with
blank,
that.
put in Norfolk?
Yeah, can we, I mean, do you want to go through it once, Wade, just to kind of give it the once over, cross something out? And
It's up to you. I'm seeing what I have. in
I would
front
kind of
me.
suggest that at least, instead of go through and do it all right here. Just let them read through it once.
If we can get this electronically,
Yeah.
I
that'd
just
be interesting.
endorse.
All right, the last page.
This is downloaded from the internet, so we can just plug in Norfolk. And I'm sure this is exactly what they're looking for.
Right, it has to be, because it's put out by the
It's the same
DEP.
DP, right?
Right.
They gotta be happy with it.
The only thing I'd make a question on is in section 2, the city of town, located within the town of, we don't have, I'm not sure, we have the zone 2s. We don't have an overlay protection, though, we just have the zone 2s, right?
Correct, yes. And that's created by DEP. It's on their website.
Could you explain Zone 1 and Zone 2, because it was,
It's the area of influence in a well that's affected by the amount of pumping that's going on. So it's a cone of influence that, under the most dire situation when the well is being pumped, it's sucking in groundwater from that area.
so Zone 1 is closer to the well, and
Yeah.
Zone
Yeah.
2 is farther
Further
away?
away.
Yes, and it only deals with municipal wells. And Zone 1's 500 feet around it. And it's like a no zone, it's a really restricted area.
Okay.
And then you have the Zone 2, which is calculated, it's done by a calculation. That could be wavy, you have all different
Yeah,
types of shapes and
oils
styles,
Yeah.
miles and miles of land. And as Jeff mentioned, it is done on a calculation of 150 days of extreme no precipitation, and the well's a pumping maximum, and what groundwater would be sucking into that
I
wellhead.
see, okay.
Any land above it would be influenced the groundwater by, like, underground storage, leaking underground storage tanks or illegal floor drains.
Okay, but this is no zone, so this is anywhere in the town?
No, it's in this right
No,
here?
this regulation.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I think it's,
No, it mentions,
Industrial and commercial facilities.
this regulation shall apply to all new and existing facilities located within the town of Norfolk, Zone 2s or overlay protection districts. So it's within, look at section 2, scope of authority.
well, wait a minute, but
No.
what, on this page here, on the first page, the letter,
Look at section 1.
one requirement of the water management permit was the adoption of a no zoning floor drain prohibition by March 2012.
Yeah, but I think what they mean by that is you can't have a floor drain letting anything flow through it into the ground.
Right.
You
And not
got, you
near the
can't not
wells.
have a floor drain.
Yeah.
No, because you could, but you could capture the stuff that
Yes,
goes into the
tight
tank.
tank,
No,
right.
but I'm saying this regulation is for no's anywhere in the town, right?
Well,
It's not
what we're
just
talking
around-
about now is gonna be for anywhere in the town.
Anywhere in the
Yeah,
town, right.
But I'm looking right
The
here.
regulation says,
It says purpose regulation, it just says floor drains in industrial and commercial facilities.
right,
Right.
It's not talking about.
it's not all,
Garages.
right, it's not outside the
Residential.
zone 2 is what this one's not saying.
Well, this is meant for industrial zones,
Correct.
places where you have floor drains. You know, well, like 1A, down on 1A, for example, when they're washing heavy equipment down there in those places, they got
Right,
floor
but I
drains.
think this
That's where the tight
regulation,
tanks are.
this sample regulation is written for areas within a zone 2, where the letter's saying we need it throughout the town. Because it's saying the scope of authority is within Mass DEP approved zone 2s or overlay protection district. That's what this is saying in the section 2. So that's fine, we can have it throughout the town, we just have to make sure the wording under the scope of authority is more
Okay,
broad.
within the town,
Zone 2.
Mass DEP approves. Town of Norfolk.
So if we strike the language beyond it, we just leave it, regulations apply to all new and existing facilities located within the town of Norfolk, period.
Yeah,
And just get rid of the overlay districts or zone 2s.
because they're asking us to identify whether this regulation applies to the entire community.
Right.
The answer is yes, it does.
In Zone 2 is also considered areas with private wells and septic systems, and you do have that, sections of that in town. That's not within a zone, a municipal zone 2. Like you have a neighborhood like Valentine, Lane or Drive, that area up there in town, all private wells, and that would be considered a zone 2.
All right, do you want to go through right now and fill in the blanks with Norfolk in the 3 or 4 places and be done?
Well, Betsy can do that, electronically. We just got to make sure that
Right.
we catch the things like you just
Right.
did.
So if we look at the place that, well, that's why it's nice to have Wade read through it once, but.
So scratch Mass DEP approves Zone 2s or overlay protection districts.
So we in section 2, scope of authority, where that's a blank there, just town of Norfolk,
Right,
and that's it, period.
yep, end it there.
Section 1, groundwater resources in the town of Norfolk only, just town of Norfolk, right? So this is just.
Go back to section 1, in the 4th bullet, we talk about groundwater resources in the town of blank contribute to public drinking water supplies, and also and private, because you do have private wells in town. And if you're going outside the zone 2, or outside the commercial areas of town, then
So you suggest adding public and private?
yes, and private. Because the town serves on-site septic systems, so neighborhoods with private wells are really considered a zone 2, a nitrogen restricted area.
Mhm. That's a good point. Do we need to even define Zone 2 in the definitions, since I'm referencing it other places?
Well,
there?
you're not going to
There's
say
a
it.
definition there.
But we don't need it, right? So Betsy, on the second page, I think we can delete the definition of Zone 2, but we need to check to make sure we're getting rid of it every place. There's no place else that it appears.
It's also a question of section 4 prohibitions, because they're actually saying you can use them some places.
Well, you can define it, I'm not saying that you're enforcing anything on it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Zone
It says
2
include this
definition.
definition only if the term Zone 2 is used in the body of the regulation.
Oh,
They just say that.
But we're not.
oh,
The footnote.
oh, wow.
So we're going to scratch the footnote, and we're going to scratch the definition, because we're not using the term Zone 2. What about prohibitions?
Right there, they're saying this, they're giving you examples of where you can't use them, and we're pretty much saying you can't use them anywhere.
Yeah, well, these are just giving examples.
So if they,
We put a period after industrial and commercial facility, period. Strike everything else after.
Where are you?
Second sentence from section 4.
Mhm.
No floor drain shall be allowed to discharge with or without pretreatment such as an oil water separator to the ground, a leaching structure, or septic system in any industrial or commercial facility. Period.
Well, this is defining the nature of the kind of waste streams that we got to protect against. A, B, and C do that.
But if we're saying they can't allow them anywhere, there's no reason to define those. If such floor drain is located in, otherwise you're leaving a loophole for something
It's not-
potentially to not fall within those 3 categories.
Well, I guess you have to ask what's left over. It can't be industrial or commercial. It can't be petroleum, toxic, or hazardous.
But if you're not allowing it, why even spell those out?
And what would the floor drain be collecting then?
Well, it's an industrial, commercial process area, right? You could definitely have an area that's, even right now, you consider is a loading area fit in that?
A lot of it's snow melt from vehicles going into garages.
Right. But garage is in an industrial or commercial,
Yeah, but it's not a process area necessarily.
well, it's going to be zoned commercial or industrial.
Right. But this is an industrial, commercial process area.
Well, if it's a commercial operation, it's a commercial process, right?
I don't know. You tell me. Is that a loophole?
Whoever
If you
wrote
put a
the silly
period
thing
over
must
there,
have
do you
written-
want to deal with that?
Well, I know, I'd rather not change it much of anything if we can help it.
Well, let's see, what's the
Somebody
definition of
was
process
very
area?
comfortable with
We don't
this.
have a definition of process area here.
Right. So somehow whichever lawyer wrote this knew what a process area was. I'm sure
Exactly, and I would say it's
sure
where the
don't.
actual industrial facility, the industrial
No, I-
activity is happening, like a processing floor or a assembly line.
Well,
or-
like a landscaping firm, for example, you don't think of it as being a commercial process, but yet they have floor drains.
They could process chemicals for fertilizer on site.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying, just the fact that the equipment is out there and it got salty, and they're gonna wash it down inside their garage,
That's,
and all that oil and grease and stuff is gonna drip into the catch basin there.
right,
It's gotta go to a tight tank.
right.
Correct.
I'm saying if we just put a period there,
And you could have accidents too. Things leak, things break.
if you put a period after industrial, commercial, you cover
Well,
everything.
I understand that piece, but there's gotta be a reason why they gave these examples.
This one is not written for a blanket-wide prevention, because they say right beforehand, you can use it in zone 2s in
Yeah.
certain other ways. So
Right.
they're giving you things that, these are the issues that they're really concerned with. Industrial process areas, petroleum toxic, things like that.
Right.
They're not trying to prohibit everything like we are right now. We're taking it to the next level. We're saying we don't want them in the town.
Sure. But I'm saying these things, what are gonna be up in the first, in the mind
These
of
are,
people.
these are the most
the
important
DEP.
ones, exactly, that DEP.
And these are the folks-
DEP is not
Who are we
saying you
writing
can't
this
use them at
for?
all.
For DEP, so we can get a well,
Right,
right?
right.
So
But,
therefore we
but
gotta
on the
keep it
first
in.
page, they're saying they want it townwide. These aren't written necessarily for townwide everywhere.
So who cares, whether they're townwide or not? The point is,
If you just want to get them to go through, that's fine, you can leave it in.
well, that's.
But if it
that's
really,
why
it makes it
we're
clearer to
doing
me,
this.
if you're reading through these, that it's clear that you can't have them in town if you just put the period there and strike out these things. Otherwise, you're saying, oh, there are some that's going to be allowed because we got to go through here, so why even list them?
No, I don't necessarily follow the logic there. But
If we're trying
They've
to-
got it covered. These are the things they're trying to protect against, A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you got a floor drain that's collecting rainwater, we're not worried about that. I don't know how you'd have a floor drain collecting rainwater, but if you
Right.
did,
It's
that wouldn't be prohibited.
These live, in my opinion, these leave it open to something to be allowed in the floor drains, because that's how these are written. These are not written necessarily to block every floor drain in town. They're trying to allow something, unless it fits into these categories.
Right.
We're saying.
These
we're
are the
not-
ones DEP's worried about.
Right, but we're saying we don't want to allow any floor drains in town.
Well, I don't care if they're collecting rainwater. Maybe he's got a cistern, for crying out loud, I don't know.
Yeah, well, you don't want to prevent all floor drains, because people do need floor drains in case they come in with trucks full of snow, but a lot of the response will be put into some kind of tight tank, which is an expensive thing. The fire station has a
The ones we
tight
have in
tank.
town are actually ones that are designed for people like, the landscape firm that's trying to clean up the equipment.
Yeah.
They got a tight tank.
If you have a tight tank, it's very expensive to use it that way.
If you have, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it's saying, if you have a floor drain in an industrial or commercial area, you don't want it going to the groundwater, because the potential's there for some type of pollutant to get into it, period.
Hazardous material.
Right.
Correct. So
Petroleum.
either you go with
Toxic
a
substances.
tight tank or you seal it,
Right.
or you don't have it.
I'm just
at
saying,
all.
honestly, it doesn't matter to me, but you leave that, what this is saying, that there's certain areas where you're gonna allow it, if it doesn't fit within this area, an industrial, commercial process area. We're saying beforehand we don't allow them. I mean, I really don't wanna
Let's let it.
beat this thing exactly. You wanna leave
Fine,
it there, it
let it
doesn't
go.
bother
What
me.
about
We
the
can always
grandf-
change it later if
What
we
about
have
the
to.
grandfathered ones, though, the ones that are existing right now?
That's the next section.
Well, that's a great.
That's section
I
5.
don't know, I mean, my remembrance of this back in the day when we didn't pass it, although I think we really did, was all about, the construction facilities down in 1A, where we knew we had people that were washing down heavy equipment,
Mhm.
and they had floor drains, and we said, can't go in the ground.
Yeah.
Can't go in a septic tank.
Right.
It's gotta be in a tight tank. And that's it. I mean, we don't have any, what else do we have in town? Camger Chemical?
Well, you could say
Sure,
all
they
Well,
got
that's what it's for,
could say-
industrial and commercial areas,
all
that's it.
floor drains cannot go into a leaching pit or
Period,
chute. It has to
right?
go to a tight tank.
That's what I just said,
Yeah.
period.
Period.
So take out the ones behind that. That's what's in, if you look at section 4, nothing should go into it, structure, into the ground, a leaching structure or septic system in any industrial or commercial facility, period. Right.
I understand that, man, but we're writing this thing for the benefit of DEP, right? They like this stuff, not getting into
No,
the groundwater.
this is for us to modify it. This is clearly, as it states, it's a model regulation.
Yeah, but this is beyond that. They are very concerned
I don't care it's in there, but I
about these
disagree.
particular wastes.
Where's your period go? I'm not following you.
After commercial
On section
facility.
4, right, prohibitions,
Okay.
after
No, we're just,
commercial
Jeff,
facility.
we're just asking for
Got it,
trouble
got
by
it.
taking out stuff. Those are buzzwords. These are important. These grab your attention. You can't take those out.
No, I
That's
say,
not the same thing as
I
calling it
disagree,
zone
but
two.
I'm not gonna argue it, we can always change it later.
Fine, let's
Leave it
stop
in.
arguing it.
Yep. Section 5, requirements for existing facilities.
So do we have this now? Are there any permanently sealed drains now? Is that what happened? I mean, or do we still have people with drains?
Do we even know what's,
Well, how-
I would say in the 60s and 70s, you probably had a majority of your contractors, like even gas stations with drains going right directly into the ground. But after the 90s, people became educated. Small companies came out to pick up hazardous waste or waste oil and stuff. People were using it to burn it in heaters and stuff. It's being reused, recycled, so it's now become a valuable piece of product. And new buildings now being built, there aren't any open drains going into the ground.
But the old buildings that are
So
on
this
Route
requires
1A.
them to comply.
You may have old buildings in there, if it's the same owner for the last 30 or 40 years, and you haven't done anything.
Right?
Yeah.
Were you on board
Same
when they
building,
built the car wash?
Yes, oh, yes, yes, those are tight tanks,
All right.
recycling tanks. Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
we're requiring all buildings that have them now to comply now.
How do you enforce that?
That's a tough one.
Well, you have to first of all know about it. So one way enforcing it, one way would help the review process, like a planning board or someone's doing some development, you would catch it, doing a revision on a building, you could catch it saying, oh, there's a drain on the ground, you gotta convert it to a tight tank. That's one way of doing it. All new construction would have it, because it would be in the regulations, they would know about it, and the other ones would just, you work on it.
The other ones you work on it.
Either you find it by going out inspections, or it goes through, additions on buildings.
I mean, it's like if you come up with a
Someone
building
might
code
tell somebody
violation
else.
during a expansion or something, right? You
Yeah,
gotta
expansion,
fix
yeah,
it, so
additions and
that's-
stuff, yeah, absolutely.
So,
And people just have it and they don't want it. Because once you sell a commercial property, you have to go through 21E, where they end up evaluating the soils, any kind of waste products in the ground. And if you have an open drain in a garage somewhere, no one wants that anymore. Nor does anyone want to buy anything like that. So it's almost self-correcting. But this ensures DEP that if they're allowing a new well in town, they're not gonna have some guy blowing oil into it, and we have to close it. and-
Our regulations now, like you said, the car wash has the tight tanks. They're in a zone 2, right? I believe that's in a zone 2 over there.
Correct, I think it is, yeah, but it's
So do every commercial structure built right now require tight tanks? Yes?
that we know of.
Wait, industrial wastewater holding
If
tanks?
it's a floor drain, it does.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a plumbing code that it has to have it can't discharge to the ground at all.
Shires Road has.
They all have tight tanks.
The Sunoco station must have a tight
They,
tank.
they're new, yeah, that's,
That I don't know. The fire station has one. I've seen that.
yeah. No, I'd be more concerned with the buildings that have been around for a
What
while,
about-
or ones that were recently built outside of the zone 2.
PW? No,
Town
because-
garage,
Yeah. Because
the
they're-
highway department garage.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think they
But
do.
it's pretty
Yeah,
old.
they do.
Yeah, being a landowner, you don't want hazardous waste being sucked into your ground. I mean, you can pay for it now or pay for it later.
But I thought that if there was a hauler taking this stuff out of the tanks and getting rid of it, that they have to be permitted in the town, right? Oh, so they all are.
But that's with the tight tank, we just wanted to.
So we would know where they're
Have tight
going,
tanks.
at least.
Well, we would know there are locations if they're described pumping out a tight tank.
I guess we could just ask Bob McGee.
All right, well, let's, I mean,
But
we
anyway,
gotta leave
that's-
this in, obviously, we gotta get it, so we can get the well, and
But it's not
someone's
something
gonna
that
try to
gets
use it about it later, we can deal with it.
instantly. It takes time.
Effective date, they're gonna pay post in front of the basis of the day for the date of the adoption. Ooh, we give them 120 days.
Should we make this the effective date of this regulation today?
If we're gonna vote on it.
Yep. So we got 120 days to tell everybody in town.
Yeah, but I don't think you can vote on it today. I think you have to advertise it.
You have to have a hearing, right?
That's what I
Yeah.
was wondering, 'cause we're gonna affect some people with this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you have to let everybody who has the, knowing that if they might have a piece of property with a drain, they can come in and talk to you about it.
Let's do it as fast as possible.
Yeah, but
They're
it's
waiting
right.
on us.
It's the same, we're gonna get some, we could get some angry people if we just tried to vote this in.
You could put it out as a proposed, looking for public comments.
All right, so let's,
And next time you guys meet, and then before you guys meet, a couple of weeks before, you can put on the agenda that this is what you want to work on, that you want to adopt it, and then people come to it. Because once you just put it out for the word, doesn't mean you have like a structured time that you have to adopt it. You could put it out, we're looking at this, looking for public comments, we're gonna make
but to get, we have to have it in place for the well.
wait, is there a time frame?
I would
I had
imagine
the
we have to
impression there
have it
was.
on the
Betsy,
books.
did you get the impression that this had to get done lickety-split?
I don't know.
Or at least you should,
Where's the front page on this?
it'd only be fair, to make public comments.
What did I do? Page
one of the action items, and we can see what it says, if it says anything.
It says here, one requirement to the water management permit was adoption of a non-zoning floor drain prohibition by March 1st, 2012. So we're only 5 years behind schedule here, guys.
So I say there's no hurry.
Well, unless there's a permit for this well that's waiting on this particular.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that's an action item, they said by DEP, so pump to this, water supply, source protection.
Well, they're looking at they're examining the.
Okay, right here,
site
look at number
examination and
7,
test.
reviews and approval of that. It says water supply source protection. The town was required to adopt non-zoning flood drain prohibition by March 1st, 2012, as a condition of the management permit issued in 2010. The town is currently out of compliance. No further approvals beyond this site exam approval will be issued until the town is complied with this requirement.
Yeah.
We're reading.
Number 7, page 4 of 6 on,
Thank you.
first one.
The Mass DEP letter. Robert Oswick.
So I think it's gonna hold up issuance of that permit for the well.
Okay, let's then possibly go ahead with public hearing.
Yeah, so we just gotta get
Public-
going on this.
Yeah, have public comments and have a public hearing, and then I have some really good advice coming in, or good suggestions.
All right, so on the last page, new facilities, we just gotta put in town of Norfolk. And then just put it out there for comments in the hearing, right? I mean, like I said, we're, what, 5 years behind, so we just gotta get going.
Yeah, the people CC'd was the water, Norfolk Water Department. That's how we heard it through Bob, I guess.
And you can let Bob McGee know that we're in the process, if that helps, that helps.
that would help a
Forward
lot.
that on to DEP,
Of
you know,
course,
that we're,
yeah.
you know, we're trying to adopt this now, it's on the agenda for the next hearing, I don't know if that'll.
Or you even to notice a public, hearing public comments.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if that'll help
That's
with the
going ahead.
DEP going forward without the approval, but at least they'll know we're moving forward, so.
Being serious, and it'll pick up the
Yeah.
application again.
Well, there is a forgiveness built into this thing. It says that owners have 120 days to comply.
Right, but I wonder if they're looking for an actual adoption, so we don't have the regulations quite adopted yet, so they're not on the books. But like I said, at least we can let them know that we are trying to get it on the books,
Yeah,
if that helps.
yeah, Bob looked better in this meeting.
Right. All right, I'm good with that.
All right, so these are the regulations that we are considering adopting. So we can't issue them yet.
The ones that we're,
Well, we just-
You
the
just went
edits that
over,
you just
right.
made, right. Okay.
You have to have a public hearing first.
What's the deal on posting for public hearing, Betsy?
I don't remember.
Whatever it was for 21 tobacco, right, same thing?
Yeah, I forget
what
what the
was-
time, forget what the time frame was.
What was tobacco time? You see,
Yeah,
because I know like Title V's 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was just thinking
Yeah.
14 days at the.
Probably about
Probably
that.
14 days. So we need to get an ad run, is that the way to do it, or can we just post it on the virtual
No,
wall?
I think I have to put a legal ad in the paper.
That might be a really wise thing to do, though. It's just public notification of what you're doing, so people,
Right.
let's say you're
Put
working
it
in
on
a
the town
dock.
website.
You might get some really good comments coming in. We did it for the Title V regulations, and actually, a lot of people did come in and comment.
Yeah.
We should
And
put
some
on
people
there,
came in to complain, and they were asked to comment.
Yeah.
we should put on there that it's required by DEP for this well. No, we're just not just making this up because we want to do it, you know? We don't have to try to be difficult, we need this.
Good point, but you're not gonna find many buildings with drains going into the backyard somewhere. That's ludicrous, if they're somewhat of a smart business person.
That's
Building-
a-
This
I
building's
don't
been
know.
around for a while. Yeah, I don't know, but then again,
We had this conversation already once. And it had to do with one of those sites down on 1A. I think it was a landscaping or heavy equipment maintenance garage. As you went down to 1A from 115 in town, you turned left. It was down on the left, about where that florist nursery is now. Isn't there a heavy equipment using maybe a landscape operation?
well, the nursery has
Right next to,
landscaping
It's not- it's like-
materials.
Yeah, but this had to do with lots of heavy equipment.
298 Main Street?
I'm just trying to think whether there might be something in our files already, because I know we had this conversation about the use of a tight tank in that building as it was being built. This has to go back 15 years at this point.
Is it a big garage next to a residential home?
I'm not sure there being a residential down there. You know,
Well, these regulations put on DEP are fairly recent, so I mean, even if you find something that's 15 years old, I'm not sure how it's gonna help. You still have to adopt something new.
well, yeah.
So let's get it out there.
It's better than none, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's just get it out there. See, I mean, it all depends if there's gonna be a bunch of pushback, so we're gonna have to put this out there and see what happens. I mean, if there's gonna be people that are gonna have to pay for this, there might be some pushback, we don't know, but we gotta take the first step.
Well, there might be, although I think Wade is correct in that a lot of places already are doing this.
Oh, yeah, they are doing it, I'm just saying, let's find out. If someone has an older building that has these and does not wanna pay for putting in a tight tank, which is not a cheap endeavor.
Maybe we want to be quiet about it, because if you want to sell the property or have it
Now, listen, let's
publicly
just,
stating, I have a
let's get it
dream,"
out there, see what happens.
That'd be
Well-
ludicrous,
You gotta
Yeah,
take
but they
that
won't be
step.
able to sell the property.
unless they clean it up. And if you do buy the property, that means you're also responsible for cleaning it up too. So the buyers of these commercial properties are very careful. They want to, it's called a 21E.
They own cradle to grave.
Is there anything over at the old hospital? What is over at the old, there's a lot of stuff
Whoever
over
buys
there.
it's responsible, the 21E site over there.
Well,
But,
right.
Like I said, let's just,
So that-
we have to put these out.
It's not
and see what happens.
It's not an
operational right
It's not an
now.
industrial process,
Nothing
I
is
guarantee you that.
operational.
There was a project that was proposed on that site, and there was some work done, but I'm not sure if there's.
All right,
hazardous
so
waste.
here's the deal, Betsy, we gotta get a public hearing notice out ASAP. Probably for a notice or hearing sometime in January.
When you want to do this?
So it's gotta run in the paper, you think?
Well, You can be doing this,
Sun
to the-
Chronicle?
you
Whatever
can also
we
be
did
doing
with-
this to the holidays too.
Whatever we did with Tobacco 21.
The comment period through the holidays. Just some, some thought process in it. If she puts it out on a newspaper next week, you have a 2-week period, that'd be like during Christmas and New Year's
You want to
Eve.
put it out in the first, beginning of January instead?
No.
Well,
I'm
why?
putting it up now.
Yeah.
Put it on now? Okay.
No one will
I'm
come.
going to have the hearing.
Hey, guess what?
How about
That ain't gonna be
January
a problem.
30th? What a Tuesday, January 30th for the hearing?
It's-
In January, yeah.
Could always be changed if something comes up.
All right, let's put it out there.
At least it's a
I
site
don't
you
want,
can.
I don't want to change if I have a public hearing scheduled.
Well, right now you're just having public comments, right? Have public
No,
comments?
No,
we're having
we
a
wanna-
public hearing.
The hearing is gonna be for the comments.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, it'll be into February.
Oh, okay.
All right, so let's shoot for the 30th for the public hearing,
Should you have,
which will close with a vote. And
but before that, are you gonna have a proposed regulations written up so you can reread it again?
Yes.
I mean,
Someone's
yeah,
gonna- we
they're
just did
there.
'em.
We
Yeah.
just did that.
Yeah, but Betsy would probably write it up to make it formalized of what you're gonna be adopting, in case people come and say, I wanna see it.
Oh,
Yes.
All right, so
Yeah,
just, you got the changes, right? We know what they are.
She can send it electronically to you maybe, Tom, so if you like it, or to all three
Here,
board
let
members.
me give you, because this is all marked up with
You
the
got it
things
all
we
marked?
just decided.
Do you have the
Except
period in there?
Okay.
Scratch date of
I'll
issuance.
scratch it up. I'll,
Be optimistic and put it on December 12th.
Is there a period in section 4?
No, there's no period in section 4.
I think we took the period out.
This one,
Probably should be.
having no period is gonna take the guy who's running a greenhouse off the hook, or something which is not an industrial process.
You're right,
Well,
putting a
and you
plant in the
don't
audience
know
is gonna
what's
ask for a
gonna
period.
We don't know what's going to happen in the future.
But you're right about a greenhouse, would be a perfect place for a floor drain with all the pesticides and stuff and the water and the
Well,
plant.
but that's
Is
a good
that covered
point.
under here?
Well, see, that's not, well, if it's got pesticides, then you got hazardous materials.
Okay, but
Anything's
if they're just
got certain
watering the
quantity, you
plants,
know
it
that.
wouldn't be considered.
Well, that's, everything is hazardous.
That's
You drink enough of it.
Exactly, anything in a certain quantity is hazardous.
That's why the zone 2 is such an important thing. If you put in zone 2, you have a really good reason saying you cannot do this because we're drinking the water underneath it. If you're outside of zone 2, then some of those oddities can
Well,
probably be.
But guess what, you're still in somebody else's zone too.
Right,
Like the guy next door to you with a well.
Exactly.
So you can argue that if you're
Correct.
worried about groundwater protection.
Should go be town-wide. That's a good idea.
All right, so
Where
here's
do I
the
go
marked
from
up
here?
version. This, you got this off the internet, right? So you just have to,
Hopefully there's a Word document somewhere. There should be.
We can convert a
I
PDF.
think that was,
Well, the planning,
Send it to me, I can
the
convert
man
it.
that,
I'll check Betsy, I think I've got a Word document.
I can't.
but the town planner should
I
have
don't
that, because he sent it to us.
Just send it to me, I can change a PDF to a
Well, I
Word.
found,
I
no, I
should be
found
able,
the.
it should be, this should be
All right,
available.
if it's not, just let me know, I can do it.
Yeah, it should be available too.
Huh?
Oh, yeah,
Type in
I
that.
just remembered, I sent her a Word document, that's it. So, we definitely have one. All right, what's next?
Nothing, I got the
IT guy.
Discuss updating tobacco
No,
regs, we
the-
did that, right?
Yep, we did everything.
Somebody's got this.
We got
Anticipated
unanticipated
business,
business.
we did that.
Oh, really?
Unanticipated,
Yeah.
anything else unanticipated here?
If it was how do you anticipate it?
Orange.
I don't know.
All right,
Motion to
I
adjourn.
was just.
is there a
I
second?
second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we're adjourned. 9:12-ish?